Where's the order? Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, I know. I say that every few videos because they're so few and far between. But I can't speak about anything without confirmation. It's unsafe. Anyway, I pray in the name of Yahuah HaMashiach that all has been well and that everyone's been walking in the light of the truth. I pray that everyone's been trying to keep the commandments. And I pray that all have been resisting the devil. Alright, so today I want to talk about order because Yahuah created this existence and gave it order so that all could and would operate smoothly. Now, this might be an offensive topic for some people because the society and social guidelines that we currently live by are completely out of order. Most of the things we all see as normal and acceptable are actually out of bounds. Seriously out of bounds, according to Yahuah's order. For instance, as someone who works with children, one of the main forms of disorder that I witness every day is the household disorder. And really, that's the one that matters the most. Now, what exactly does this look like? Well, let's take a look in Bible. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Mashiach, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Mashiach is Yahuah. So in Yahuah's kingdom, Yahuah, is at the top. He's the boss. Under Yahuah is Yahusha, and Yahusha is the boss of the man. Then the man is the boss of the woman, and the woman is the boss of the children. Okay, that's easy to understand. The issue is that many people don't understand how this should look in real time in modern life. How does someone be a head over someone else? Well, let's look. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 4 to 6. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. Now, pause. Who's the head of the man? Mashiach Yahusha. Yes. Now, this is to say, covering in prayer. You can never cover Mashiach in physical. And in prayer, it's just not necessary. Covering them in prayer and asking for their protection and safety. A man would never have to do this because his head, the one who's his boss, is Mashiach, Yahusha. And all things are already put into his power. So Mashiach has no need for the prayers of his inferior. Let's just be honest. Anyway, continuing. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head. For that is even all one as if she were shaven. Pause again. So it's like if she's bald. So in the spirit, our heads are like crowns, our glory. And as females, we're made in the image of the man. Remember, Eve came from Adam. It sounds strange, but yes. So if we think to pray for or make professions for ourselves, but not, or to leave out the person who's supposed to be protecting us, we've done wrong. We've done wrong. Continuing. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. So, if a woman is not going to have a spiritual covering, she should not be a certain way. She should still be physically and in other ways not having glory, not having attention or attaining certain things. For instance, maybe a YouTube channel, because you'll be subject to a lot. Let's just keep going. Let me explain. So, a woman who isn't covered by a man, be it her husband, her father, her brother, her uncle, some male figure in her family, she must be careful because she has no immediate spiritual protection. Let's find out why this is a problem. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 10. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels. Now, we know from previous videos that there were giants in the earth in the past. And also, every single time, the angels come down and they have children with the women. Now, obviously, that's out of order. Yahuah never wanted that, but it happens. So, if that was happening then, what's to stop it from happening now? This is why she needs to be covered. It doesn't have to be by a husband, but by a man who will protect her in the spirit. He will cover her so that she will not appear in the spirit like to an angel or something like that. She's not visible because she's covered. Also, she needs to be covered. Even if she has like gifts, like spiritual gifts, she needs to be covered so that she doesn't attract the attention of unclean things. Without immediate spiritual protection, the woman who is raised in the spirit by praying and prophesying will attract unwanted spiritual attention. Fallen angels and other disobedient spirits and spiritual things are always looking for light to steal. And remember, we, as followers of Yahushua, are the light of the world. No matter what gender we are, we're the light of the world. And remember, these other things can't come into the presence of Yahuah or Yahushua, so they don't have access to that except through us. This is why it was so important in the Bible to have a male heir. Not just to pass the name. This is what people think, but it's not to pass the name or the Y chromosome or the land, but to be the spiritual protector of the females in the family until they got married or found their place in the world, whatever that may be. So the male is supposed to protect the female, yes. And this is where things have gone askew. How can we ask a female to trust, follow, and stick with a man who will not protect her, even from himself? This isn't the man's fault, not fully anyway. This was a program run in the 50s and 60s. If you ever watch movies from back then, you'll notice a subtle shift in the tone of the movies. I was the other day, and I was immediately struck by like, wow, this father is so selfish. He's selfish. So let's just scroll back. Whereas it used to be the man giving his all for the people in his life, even putting aside his own personal interests and desires to be there for the people who he was responsible for, and even for people who he wasn't responsible for. The storylines begin to change. Now, it becomes the man ignoring or neglecting his responsibilities in some way, shape, or form in order to establish himself or fulfill his own personal goals, while the woman steps in to take on more than what she's supposed to be responsible for because she loves the man. Now, I've actually seen this in real life, and it was the most disheartening thing ever because it was from people who I love. And one day, me and a person, a male, were having a conversation about, life. And he was telling me about his personal goals. And then when I asked him, what is your sort of like goal for like yourself and your family, like as a whole? He had no response, not one. He literally was stymied, like he had no response. And I was deeply hurt because I know if I'd asked the woman that question, she would have been able to respond. Even if I'd asked the kids that question, they would have been able to respond, but he had no response. He had to get back to me like 2 weeks later, and I was very upset because for me it really showed, it was like a upfront example of what was wrong or what is wrong, how the man has goals and thoughts and ideas as it pertains to himself, but as a whole, or where it pertained to his family, there was no thought even given. And it just wasn't good. It wasn't good. And I can see how it puts strain on the woman. I could literally already see it, but that was like the crux of it all. I could see that was exactly why, because the person had never thought of them as a whole. Then what happened in the past, though, is people grew up and they tried to follow this narrative that, it's crazy. They realized it was crazy, extremely taxing, and actually dangerous in some cases, especially for the women. Women saw this on movies or television, like, wow, this is what it's like to be this type of woman who serves this type of man, who marries this type of man, not realizing that, wait, this is actually crazy. Of course, they make it like so fun and interesting and cool in the movies, but it's not like that. It's truly not like that. In reality, it was just like, because the men had been given license to be unnaturally selfish. It was like socially acceptable, even expected. So, yeah. An entire generation of women suffered through horrible marriages while their children watched and took it all in. Now, we can't expect children not to see these things. They're not stupid and they're not blind. For some of these children, watching the dynamics of the household and seeing how toxic it was made them never want to marry for fear of suffering the same way. Or it made them sort of callous, where they can't bend. I can't be considerate because you'll take advantage. Now, for others, it became the example of what a normal household should look like, because their mothers never came clean, and they masked their emotions so well that the child thought she was happy. This kind of child grew up and looked for a way to create a living environment just like the one they grew up in, but never quite could, and blamed it on the female, unaware that the real issue was the expectations that they had. Now, this generation creates an even bigger divide between their children. Their children grow up in dysfunction that is disguised as normalcy. Women who have left their selfish and miseducated men go on to raise females who hate and distrust men, for the most part anyway. And males born from these runaway women both love and resent their mothers for giving them a life without a father, because now they have no example, neither positive nor negative. The female children suffer too, because now they have no idea how to be loved by a male. Now both males and females are fighting to find out what it means to be or to have a covering. Now, at that point, there were still some males who knew how to be a covering, but most are not followers of the way. They don't truly believe in the Mashiach, and instead, they follow other beings. This is how we begin to see and form generational curses, witchcraft powers, and connections to demonic spirits in bloodlines. Scary. The man who's covering is not getting his power and authority from Yahuah through Yahusha. Instead, he's in league with the forces of evil, and thereby tying his entire family, or whoever he's covering, to this same evil force. It doesn't have to be his wife and kids only. It can be his mother, if she has no husband, his sisters, if they're unmarried and have no children, his girlfriend, and whoever she has authority over. And now we see how dangerous this is. It's not unchangeable, though. The first step is for all parties to turn back to Yahuah immediately. If you know that the men in your life are not serving Yahuah with all their hearts, minds, souls, and strength, then get down on your knees with your nose to the floor and repent. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Repent, not just for your own sins and the sins of whoever's covering you, but also for the lack of knowledge everyone exercised by not reading Bible and finding out this for yourselves. Ask Yahuah to remove the evil covering from off you and to cover you and change the hearts of the people around you who are still walking in darkness. Let's look at a few verses for examples of how it should be done. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 to 29, although there's going to be some commentaries in between. So, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as unto masters or lords. Note that it doesn't say all women. No. It just says wives. Not all men are righteous. So women shouldn't just submit themselves to all men unless they have a covenant with him. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Mashiach is the head of the assembly, and he is the savior of the body. Therefore, as the assembly is subject unto Mashiach, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. So, Mashiach is in charge of the assembly of believers. That's to say, everyone who believes in him, for better or for worse. Remember, one of the things he is charged with is making sure that nobody who his father gives to him is missing from his care when his father comes to collect. And that's a very serious charge, because we can go astray all on our own, but he's still responsible for bringing us back, just like the man. The same way a parent might ask a kid to hold something for them until they come back from somewhere and expect for the child to still have it, all of it, when they come back. Yahuah has the same expectation for Yahusha. Women, be discerning. If you can't see yourself trusting and following this man, don't choose him. Period. If he shows unrighteous behaviors at the beginning, expect that he'll have unrighteous behaviors later. And if what he shows is unrighteous, imagine what he doesn't show. So, be discerning, please. Husbands, love your wives, even as Mashiach also loved the assembly and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be set apart and without blemish. Now remember, Yahushua loved the believers and even the non-believers so much that he was willing to die for them. Many people who were non-believers back then have descendants living right now who love and follow Yahushua, which is why he was willing to die for even those who cared nothing for him, because he knew that in the future they might bring forth someone who would believe him. Mashiach is careful to maintain and keep clean what his Father has given him. Because, let's be honest, no matter how much we like or love something, nobody wants to be responsible for something that's filthy. And nobody would return something that had been lent to them without making sure it was clean first. Let's just be honest. Continuing. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever hated his own flesh, but nourisheth it, and cherisheth it, even as Mashiach the assembly. Again, the man must be willing to love, even as he's loved by himself. He can't claim to love something or someone that he's not even willing to care for properly. If he loved it, he'd take care of it the right way. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives. Now, this is an interesting one, because even if the man is unrighteous or he's acting unrighteously, he can still be brought over or won over because the wife is right. She'll be the example. He'll look at her and be like, what is wrong with her? No matter what I'm doing, and I'm not encouraging people to stay in bad situations, certainly not, but it shows if he's just not a follower of Mashiach, but he's not bad. Well, it shows him why what she does is better, why who she serves is better, because he can't attain to what she can attain to. He can't even have the bandwidth and the patience and the gentleness to be the way she is, because he lacks the virtue. But he can only get that from Mashiach. And this is also the problem. Yes, society has dealt the man an almost impossible hand, but because he's trying to work in his own strength instead of relying on Yahuah, he's stymied. He's completely blocked, because he refuses to accept responsibility and sacrifice himself and his own desires for those under him. He's blocked. Remember, the greatest in the kingdom is the one who serves the most, not the one who works for the most. And the spirit of person is raised not by their own desire, accomplishments, or power, but rather by the people who they serve, because those same people will hold them up. It's the support of those people, the love of those people, will raise them. This is why celebrities need your support. This is why they want you to like them, to have spiritual influence. Same as influencers. I mean, they're called influencers. When a man cannot put the people beneath him before him, we end up in the current situation. Not just because he's made selfish mistakes or choices, but because he's unrepentant and his prayers are being hindered. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Yahuah will not listen to the prayers of a man who will not even care for his own responsibilities. No. In Bible, it calls such men worse than unbelievers. It says infidels, but unbelievers. Now, the woman has made mistakes too. She's turned away in rage and rebellion because the one who she's supposed to go to directly for help will not help her. She's turned away from him and went off on her own because she probably doesn't have a spiritual covering in her family to turn to, and she doesn't know Yahuah. She's uncovered, leaving her open for attack, like a city with no walls, like Jerusalem. And remember, When Yahusha marries the new kingdom, he covers that kingdom, that city that he calls his wife, with his own righteousness. Now, if a woman has no righteousness, or if a man has no righteousness to cover the woman with, she's spiritually naked. She's an open target. But like Jerusalem, because this is going to be funny, and just like Jerusalem, her children will be out of control. Remember, he said Jerusalem was worse than Samaria after a while, because she has to go out and be the provider, leaving the house empty. There is no dominion, no power in that house, which is what we see now. Anything can now enter through the TV, the iPad, the stereo, cell phones, anything. Anything can come and set up a spiritual throne there. And because the woman isn't in sync with the male, even when she smells smoke, there isn't any covering over the house to put it out, because she herself has given the power and dominion to something else, simply by not being there. This is what it means to hold down the fort. This is what the woman does. She keeps the power and protection given to her and her male from Yahuah through Yahusha in the house by being there, more than anyone or anything else. This is also why it's very hard sometimes for women to live in a house together, because then they're fighting for the dominion, especially if they're living in ways that they shouldn't be, not married but also in relationships, because then they're bringing authority, spiritual authority from these men into their home, and then they wonder why they're not getting along, because in the spirit you have different things happening. Yeah, this is why many women are naturally very funny about their homes and their things. It's a spiritual thing. They're funny about their kids too, but when the woman isn't present because she's doing the man's job, the children are not covered, and the woman often has to find others to cover the children and to teach the children, which is why so much pressure is placed on teachers and other people who will interact with the child. They want the minor characters in the child's life to fill all the gaps that the main characters should be playing. Imagine going to the movies to see Sherlock Holmes, but having the minor characters like Mycroft and Miss Hudson doing all the deducing. No one's paying for that. In real life, this is dangerous. It's funny there, but in real life, it's serious. This is how we have people who should not be having control over our children's minds, beliefs, and behaviors being the most important and consistent people in their lives. Not that many of these people aren't marvelous, because most of them are, and they really do care. But we see now the pushback from parents who don't want their children to be taught certain things at certain times and in certain ways. The problem is that these people are the ones your children are being made subject to. But it's Romans. Know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servant ye are, whom you obey, whether of sin unto death, or of obedience unto righteousness. Now, it sounds silly, but your children are spending probably more time with these people than with the parent in the house. So they look up to these people. This person is there every day for them. This person spends the same amount of time with them every day. They speak to them every day. Sometimes this person even goes out of their way to accommodate your child or to do things for your child, to be with your child, because they know that they're not going to get it from home, unfortunately. And because of that, your child makes themselves subject to this person, and they'll obey them. I've literally seen it where parents are like, I'm going to tell Miss blah, blah, blah. I'm going to call Miss blah, blah, blah if you don't listen. And it's just like, wait, how can Miss blah, 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 the teacher, have more power than you? How is it that they revere the teacher more than you? You're their parent. You made them. They'll obey them because they're getting consistent attention, quality time, and presence from these people. Again, many are lovely and make huge sacrifices for these children, but that's not right. It's not their job. It's the parents' job. Meanwhile, people who are supposed to be characters for only one season are making bigger sacrifices than the parents, and people who hopefully your children will never meet in this lifetime, if they're lucky, have become their idols. Think about it. What's more is the parents get angry and feel that their authority has been usurped when they realize that the child has become more like someone else and follows someone else more than their own parents. They want someone else to do the hard work of helping to raise their child while also instilling the character traits and beliefs that they themselves want the child to have. And they get angry when that doesn't happen. Get real! It's not going to happen. So again, how do we rectify the situation? By getting back in order. And how do we do that? Well, it looks different from person to person depending on their circumstances, but the first step for everyone will be turning back to Yahuah. He's at the top of the staircase. So even if you can't see the steps because you're in the dark, you can't see the steps leading up to him. If you move forward with your eyes on him, you'll eventually reach the top. It's like navigating using the night sky. Please, let's stop trying to chart our own courses and start following the plans Yahuah has set for us already. Those plans will always be superior to our own because he knows all things and how even the smallest of our human actions can have the biggest effect, for better or for worse. Hope someone at least made it to the end because the analytics are just outrageous. And whichever kids are clicking the videos just to hear their names, cut it out. I miss you too though. And until next time, Hallelujah.